Hello and welcome everyone. Myself Mijanur Rahaman, and today my topic of discussion is oxytocin. In the previous video we have discussed about the posterior pituitary hormones. In that video we have discussed about ADH, and in this video we will discuss about the second hormone released by the posterior pituitary. So first of all, oxytocin, source of secretion. Oxytocin is secreted mainly by the paraventricular nucleus of hypothalamus. It is also secreted by supraoptic nucleus in a small quantity. So oxytocin is mainly secreted by PVN or paraventricular nucleus of hypothalamus and also secreted by supraoptic nucleus in a small quantity, and it is transported from hypothalamus to posterior pituitary through the nerve fibers of hypothalamus hypophyseal tract. In the posterior pituitary, the oxytocin is stored in the nerve endings of hypothalamus hypophyseal tract. When the suitable stimuli reach the posterior pituitary from the hypothalamus, oxytocin is released into the blood. Oxytocin is secreted in both males and females. Now, chemistry and the half-life. Oxytocin is a polypeptide and it has 9 amino acids. It has also a half-life of about 6 minutes. Now, action in females. In females, oxytocin acts on mammary gland and uterus. So, first, action of oxytocin on mammary gland. Oxytocin causes the ejection of milk from the mammary glands. So, what oxytocin does? Oxytocin causes the ejection of milk from the mammary glands, and ducts of the mammary glands are lined by myoepithelial cells. Now, oxytocin causes the contraction of the myoepithelial cells and flow of milk from alveoli of mammary gland to the exterior throat duct system and nipple. Now, the process of which the milk is ejected from the alveoli of mammary gland is called milk ejection reflex or milk let down reflex. It is one of the neuroendocrine reflex. So, milk let down reflex is a neuroendocrine reflex phenomena. Now, what is milk ejection reflex or milk let down reflex? Plenty of touch receptors are present on the mammary gland, particularly around the nipple. When the infant suckles the mother's nipple, the touch receptors are stimulated, and then the impulse discharged from the touch receptor are carried by the somatic afferent nerve fibers to paraventricular and supraoptic nucleus of the human hypothalamus. Now, hypothalamus in turn sends the impulse to the posterior pituitary through the hypothalamus hypophyseal tract, and then afferent impulses cause release of oxytocin into the blood. When the hormone reaches the mammary gland, it causes contraction of myoepithelial cells and results in the ejection of milk from mammary gland. As this reflex is initiated by the nervous factors and completed by hormonal action, it is a neuroendocrine reflex. During this reflex, large amount of oxytocin is released by positive feedback mechanism. So the phenomena. So first of all, the baby starts sucking his mother's mammary gland. Then, whenever the baby put the mother's nipple into his or her mouth, then the stimulation receptor are activated and the stimulation is going to the hypothalamus, to the paraventricular nucleus and supraoptic nucleus. Then through this nucleus from hypothalamus hypophyseal tracts, it stimulation also goes to posterior pituitary and oxytocin is released and contraction of myoepithelial cells occurs and milk ejection is ongoing. You can see in the diagram clearly. Now, action on uterus. Oxytocin also acts on pregnant uterus and also on non-pregnant uterus. So, oxytocin has both roles in case of pregnant and non-pregnant women's uterus. On pregnant uterus, throughout the period of pregnancy, oxytocin secretion is inhibited by estrogen and progesterone. At the end of the pregnancy, the secretion of these two hormones decreases suddenly and the secretion of oxytocin increases. So, what happens? When the pregnancy is ongoing, the oxytocin release is inhibited and estrogen and progesterone release are increased. That's why it is inhibited. And oxytocin causes the contraction of uterus and helps in the expulsion of the fetus. During the later stages of pregnancy, the number of receptors for oxytocin increases in the wall of the uterus. Because of this, the uterus becomes more sensitive to oxytocin. And the oxytocin secretion increases during labor. At the onset of labor, the cervix dilates, the fetus descends through the birth canal. During the movement of fetus through the cervix, the receptor on the cervix are stimulated and start discharging large number of impulses. These impulses are carried to the paraventricular and supraoptic nucleus of hypothalamus by the somatic afferent nerve fibers. Now, these two hypothalamic nuclei secrete large quantity of oxytocin, which enhances the labor by causing contraction of uterus. And throughout the labor, the large quantity of oxytocin is released means of positive feedback mechanism. Oxytocin stimulates itself on the hypothalamus and release more and more quantity of oxytocin. Oxytocin induces the contraction of uterus, which in turn causes release of more amount of oxytocin. The contraction of uterus during labor is a neuroendocrine reflex. Oxytocin is also stimulating the release of prostaglandin in the placenta. Prostaglandins intensify the uterine contraction induced by oxytocin. On non-pregnant uterus. Now, the action of oxytocin on non-pregnant uterus is to facilitate the transport of sperms through the female genital tract up to the fallopian tube by producing the uterine contraction during sexual intercourse. What is going there? The action of oxytocin on non-pregnant uterus is to facilitate the transport of sperms through the female genital tract up to the fallopian tube by producing the uterine contraction during sexual intercourse. And during the sexual intercourse, the receptor in the vagina are stimulated, and the vaginal receptors generate the impulse, which are transmitted by somatic afferent nerves to the paraventricular and supraoptic nuclei of the hypothalamus. When these two nuclei are stimulated, oxytocin is released and transported by blood while reaching to a female genital tract. The hormone causes anti-peristaltic contraction of uterus towards the fallopian tube. It is also a neuroendocrine reflex. Now, sensitivity of uterus to oxytocin is accelerated by estrogen and decreased by progesterone. So, sensitivity of uterus to oxytocin is accelerated by estrogen and decreased by progesterone. Now, action in males. In males, the release of oxytocin increases during the ejaculation. It facilitates the release of sperm into the urethra by causing contraction of smooth muscle fibers in the reproductive tract, and particularly the vas deferens. Action in males is what? In case of males, the release of oxytocin increases during the ejaculation, and it also facilitates the release of sperm into the urethra by causing contraction of smooth muscle fibers in the reproductive tract, particularly the vas deferens. The mode of action of oxytocin. Oxytocin acts on the mammary gland and uterus by activating the G protein coupled with oxytocin receptor. Thank you so much for watching. Do like, share and subscribe. Thank you.